She was in the middle of a TikTok dance when she fired me. Standing in front of the founder's glass-walled office window, ring light on, phone balanced on a little tripod, she mouthed the lyrics to some trending song while her hands chopped through the air in perfect synchronization with the beat. I sat there in a tailored suit, tie knotted tight, contract summaries in my leather folder, watching the cousin of our company's founder rehearse a 15-second video that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with herself. Then, without breaking rhythm, she glanced over her shoulder at me and said, "You're done here. Too stiff, too boring. We need more fun, less numbers." And just like that, my career at Orion Strategies ended. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 36 years old, and until that moment, I was Vice President of Corporate Development at Orion, one of the fastest-growing consulting firms in the Southwest. I wasn't just a suit in the background. I was the guy who had personally negotiated and signed half of our biggest contracts: government defense projects, hospital systems, 2 Fortune 500 clients who had every reason to go with bigger firms, but chose us because of me. For 5 years, I'd lived on adrenaline and late nights, memorizing clauses, shaking hands, and building trust. Orion wasn't just a job. It was the place I'd built my reputation, brick by brick. The office looked like a fishbowl, glass walls and chrome edges, the kind of modern design the founder had insisted on to show investors we were transparent. Transparency doesn't mean much when the person in charge of your future is 24, with 1 million TikTok followers and 0 experience in anything other than going viral. She leaned against the desk where her uncle had once pored over quarterly reports and held up her phone. "Smile," she said. "This'll look good for behind the scenes." I didn't smile. I watched her press, stop on the recording, toss her hair, and collapse into the leather chair, like she owned the place. "You've done good work," she admitted, flipping through a stack of papers she clearly hadn't read. "But the vibe is off. The board thinks you're too serious, too corporate. We need energy. We need someone who knows how to make us look exciting online." Her words fell like they were scripted, but her eyes flicked back to her reflection in the glass every few seconds, as if the only person she was really trying to convince was herself. I thought about speaking up, about reminding her that it wasn't hashtags and dances that landed Orion a multi-year contract with the state university system, that it wasn't vibes that convinced executives at a medical device company to choose a lean consultancy over giants with 100 times our headcount. But I didn't. Years of boardrooms and negotiations had taught me something valuable. Silence is a weapon. Let them fill it. Let them mistake it for weakness while you're already calculating the fallout. She drummed her nails on the desk. "You'll get your severance. HR will email the paperwork. No hard feelings." She waved her hand like she was dismissing a waiter, then turned back to the ring light. Music thumped softly from her phone as she reset the tripod angle. I sat there one more second, staring through the glass at the open office beyond. Rows of desks. Junior analysts hunched over spreadsheets. Account managers on calls, oblivious to what was happening in here. My empire, stripped away with a toss of the hand from a girl who measured success in likes and comments. I stood up slowly, smoothed my jacket, and reached down to the black external hard drive resting on the chair beside me. All my files lived there. Client notes, contract drafts, the kind of relationship maps that took years to build. She didn't even notice when I pulled the cord from the docking station, too busy rehearsing another take. At the doorway, I paused, hand on the glass handle. "You're making a mistake," I said, voice level, the way you do when you're briefing a general or finalizing a deal. She didn't look at me, just waved again and said, "We'll be fine. Trust me." I smiled then. Not the kind of smile she could post for engagement, the kind that carried quiet promise. I walked out past the rows of desks, past the interns who barely knew my name, down the hall where the company's future was about to start unraveling. Because the truth was simple. Orion's biggest contracts weren't with Orion. They were with me. And the board would panic when they realized she had just fired the one person holding half their empire together. The whiskey glass sweated on the coffee table, a ring forming on the wood that Melissa used to nag me about polishing. The hard drive sat beside me, its tiny light blinking like a heartbeat, steady and alive, whispering to me in the darkened room. It was more than metal and circuits. It was my vault, my black box. Years of contracts, client notes, negotiation trails, private assurances only I could give. Every keystroke, every late-night edit, every clause that protected Orion from collapse lived in there. It hummed softly as I leaned back into the couch and let the bourbon burn down my throat. I remembered the first time I walked into Orion's rented office, 6 years ago. Just me, the founder, and a single intern who doubled as our receptionist. The space was so bare, we used boxes for tables until the furniture arrived. I'd already had a safe job at a major firm, but he convinced me to jump ship, promising equity if I helped him build something leaner, sharper, hungrier. And I did. I sacrificed weekends, burned through relationships, missed birthdays and funerals, because every deal felt like a war worth fighting. We landed small accounts first, regional suppliers, a school district contract, but each win was fuel. Each late night we spent redlining documents was another brick in the wall. Then came the bigger ones. I can still see the numbers, burned into memory like coordinates. Horizon Healthcare, $84 million over 5 years. Continental Defense Systems, $120 million spread across strategic consulting and supply chain restructuring. And The Jewel, Barton Industries, a Fortune 500 conglomerate, locked in at $210 million. All of them tied to me. Not Orion in general, not some faceless team, but to my name, my credibility, my handshakes across mahogany tables. Clients didn't call the generic company hotline when things got tense. They called me, Daniel Mercer. They trusted me because I didn't sell hype. I sold results. Now, sitting in my silent living room, I scrolled through my phone and saw the girl who had replaced me celebrating in the only language she understood. A 30-second clip. Her in a sequined jacket, pointing at glowing captions that read, CEO Energy, your girl boss, Orion on top. Music thumped in the background while she smirked at the camera, mouthing some empty lyrics. Beneath the video, thousands of comments applauded her rise. None of them knew that the contracts keeping the lights on weren't in her hands. They were in mine, humming gently on that hard drive, like a predator biding its time. I thought about the founder, her uncle, who had trusted me enough to put me in the trenches while he schmoozed investors. He'd told me once over a late-night dinner in Dallas, "Dan, you're the spine of this thing. Without you, Orion collapses." That had been 3 years ago. Now his niece sat in his chair, posting dances while shareholders assumed everything was fine. The phone on my table lit up, screen buzzing against the wood. I didn't need to check the name to know it was a board member. Only they called this late. The ring sliced through the quiet, insistent, desperate. I picked up the glass instead, watching amber liquid swirl as the phone kept buzzing. A second call would come, then a third. Eventually, they'd start showing up in person. The call stopped. Silence returned, heavier than before. My thumb hovered over the drive's blinking light, the steady pulse of everything Orion owed me. I thought about the cousin in her sequined jacket, smiling at a phone screen, believing she'd won. Let her believe it. Let her play queen while the walls around her rotted. I leaned back and let the silence stretch, a smile tugging at my lips. The numbers didn't lie, and sooner or later, the board would realize the truth. Tonight, I wasn't answering. The steakhouse was quiet, the kind of place where the waiters glide like ghosts, and every table is lit by a single candle that never seems to flicker. I sat in a corner booth, the leather cool against my back, watching the door. At exactly 7, Robert Hale walked in. He was one of Orion's board members, mid-60s, sharp suit that hung a little loose on his aging frame. He spotted me instantly and moved fast, like a man trying to hide desperation behind purpose. His handshake was firm, but his eyes told the real story. They were tired, nervous, searching for something I hadn't decided yet whether to give. We ordered steaks and a bottle of Cabernet. Neither of us would really taste. He leaned forward before the waiter even left, lowering his voice, though no one around us cared. Dan, the contracts are stalling. Clients are asking for you by name. They don't want to talk to her. They won't sign unless you're in the room. His words tumbled out like he'd been rehearsing them on the drive over. I swirled the wine in my glass and let the silence stretch between us. He wasn't wrong. Those contracts weren't signatures on paper to me. They were people. I'd spent nights in airport lounges listening to CEOs vent about regulators. I'd sat in hospital cafeterias with administrators who couldn't afford another bad year. I'd walked factory floors with union reps, boots crunching on concrete, listening to their fears about automation. They trusted me because I'd listened, because I'd remembered the details that mattered to them. A daughter applying to med school, a brother fighting cancer, a company tradition older than its current shareholders. That's what I carried into negotiations. When I put my name on a deal, it meant something more than a quarterly number. Robert sighed heavily. She's tanking investor confidence. The last board call, I swear to God, she was practicing a TikTok dance on mute while the CFO tried to walk her through operating losses. She didn't ask a single question about P&Ls. Nothing. Just nodded, grinned, and went back to her phone. His fork clinked against the plate, hand shaking slightly. The street is starting to notice. We've already had 2 analysts downgrade us. If we don't stabilize, we're finished. I cut into my steak slowly, chewing with deliberate calm. His panic didn't touch me. Not anymore. You knew what she was when you handed her the keys, I said. He winced, but didn't argue. Dan, he said, voice cracking just a little. Just help us fix this. Step in. Take the calls. Show the clients you're still with us. I didn't agree. I didn't refuse. I let the words hang in the air like smoke from the candle's flame. His eyes searched mine, waiting for an answer I wasn't ready to give. I'd learned long ago that silence was more powerful than any argument. He tried again. We'll make it worth your while. Equity adjustments. A board seat. Whatever it takes. I set my knife down and leaned back, finally meeting his gaze. You don't understand, Robert. Those contracts aren't Orion's. They're mine. They're tied to my name, my guarantee. Without me, they bleed out. I watched the realization land on his face, slow and heavy, like a stone sinking into deep water. He'd suspected it, but hearing me say it made it real. The waiter returned to refill our glasses, and Robert forced a smile until he left again. His hand trembled when he lifted the wine. If that's true, were already halfway dead. I didn't respond. I let the silence settle again, calm, steady, the way I'd been trained to be when the stakes were highest. I could see the question in his eyes. Would I save them or let them fall? I didn't answer. Not yet. The clip hit the internet on a Wednesday morning, and by noon, it had already racked up 2 million views. She wasn't dancing this time. Someone inside Orion had filmed the board call, where she was supposed to present quarterly performance. Instead of numbers, she stumbled over her words, confused about revenue streams, confusing net and gross, fumbling charts like a student who hadn't read the assignment. At one point, she looked off camera and asked if profit and loss are, like, the same thing. The clip cut there, but it was enough. Investors shared it in group chats. Clients forwarded it to each other with laughing emojis. By the end of the day, her face wasn't trending because of a dance. It was trending because she had become a punchline. I watched the chaos unfold from my apartment, the glow of my laptop bathing the room in cold light. Horizon Healthcare, one of Orion's pillars, sent an email that was polite on the surface, but sharp underneath. They were reconsidering their ongoing engagement. Barton Industries followed with a letter citing concerns about leadership stability. Each message landed like a quiet detonation. You could almost feel the walls of Orion's empire shaking, cracks spreading with every hour. By Friday, employees were whispering in hallways, analysts were downgrading the stock, and 2 senior managers had already jumped ship. Cash flow reports started to leak. Someone at finance was talking, maybe even trying to protect themselves. Numbers dipped fast, millions evaporating as contracts dissolved. What had taken me years to build was coming undone in weeks, like a carefully stacked tower pushed over by a careless hand. I kept my silence, but I didn't stay still. Competitors began to circle, their recruiters sliding into my inbox with messages crafted like courtship letters. Dan, your reputation precedes you. We'd make space for your entire portfolio. Some of them didn't even hide the desperation, offering signing bonuses that would have insulted me under different circumstances, but now told me exactly how valuable I was. They weren't chasing Orion. They were chasing me. They wanted my handshake, my name on contracts, the trust I had built with executives who now doubted the circus Orion had become. One firm flew me out to New York for dinner in a private room above a midtown restaurant. Another invited me to tour their headquarters, offering me a corner office before we'd even finished introductions. They promised resources, autonomy, even equity stakes. I listened, nodded, asked questions, but never committed. I wasn't shopping for a job. I was measuring leverage. Each offer was another weight in the balance, proof that I didn't need Orion. But Orion couldn't survive without me. Then it came. A formal letter delivered by courier, thick cream-colored paper with the company's embossed seal. Inside, the board requested an immediate meeting. The tone was desperate, though they tried to mask it with polite formality. Your leadership and expertise are essential in this critical moment. Essential. The word carried more truth than they realized. 2 days later, another email arrived, this one less careful. A board member I knew well wrote plainly, Dan, we need you back. The situation is untenable. Please meet with us before it's too late. I sat at my desk, the hard drive humming beside me, and read the words twice. Outside, traffic moved like nothing in the world had changed. I could picture them, sitting in that glass-walled conference room, sweat pooling beneath their collars as they realized their empire was burning down. They expected me to walk back in, extinguish the fire, save what they had recklessly handed to a child playing at leadership. I closed the letter and poured myself another drink. The power was mine, and for the first time they understood it. They wanted a savior. They wanted me to fix the mess they had created. I smiled, leaned back in my chair, and whispered to the empty room, "Not yet." The glass walls of the boardroom reflected the morning light like a stage set, sterile and bright, as if nothing inside could possibly rot. I pushed the door open and walked in, steady, calm, every step deliberate. At the far end of the long mahogany table, she sat in her uncle's old chair, phone angled under the table, thumb flicking across the screen, while her other hand scrolled through TikTok. Her fake confidence radiated like perfume, loud enough to choke anyone close, but weak enough that one stiff breeze would scatter it. The board members turned their heads when I entered. Their faces told the truth. Relief mixed with shame. They had finally admitted they'd been wrong, but they weren't sure yet if I'd punish them for it. I set the folder on the table, thick with paper, every page a nail for her coffin. No small talk, no pleasantries. I slid the first stack forward. Termination notices from Horizon Healthcare and Barton Industries, signed and dated. The lifeblood of Orion, hemorrhaging out in black ink. She looked up from her phone for the first time, eyes darting toward the papers as if they might catch fire. "These didn't happen overnight," I said, my voice level, deliberate. "They happened because leadership collapsed. Because clients don't invest in hashtags. They invest in trust. And trust walked out of this company the day I was fired." The room was silent except for the shuffle of pages as one board member after another skimmed the evidence. I slid another stack forward, cash flow reports showing the sharp decline, line items bleeding red. Investor downgrades clipped from analyst briefs. Screenshots of her TikTok clips juxtaposed with headlines about Orion's instability. Each piece built the picture she had tried so hard to deny. Her lips trembled, but she leaned back in the chair, arms crossed, voice sharper than her expression. "This is sabotage. He's twisting things. None of this is on me." I met her eyes, calm as stone. "Sabotage would imply I wanted this company to fail, but I didn't have to lift a finger. You did this yourself. I only documented it." Silence spread like a contagion. The weight of the evidence pressed against the glass walls until even the air seemed to tighten. Then I let the final card drop. "Half of Orion's top clients are already with me," I said, leaning forward. "I've moved their contracts to a competitor." Quietly, cleanly. They followed not because I asked them to, but because they no longer trusted this leadership. I let the words hang. "Your leadership." Her phone slipped from her hand, clattering against the polished table. The boardroom froze. No one rushed to pick it up. They stared at me as if the decision had already been made, but formality still required the ritual. The chairman cleared his throat, voice hoarse. "All those in favor of terminating Ms. Reynolds effective immediately." Hands rose in unison, slow but steady. Even the ones who had defended her before raised their palms like penitents begging forgiveness. She tried to speak, voice rising in panic, but the gavel came down sharp. "Final." Security appeared, called in advance. They guided her out as her protests turned shrill, echoing against glass until the door shut and silence returned. Her reputation was shredded, her influence gone before she reached the parking lot. I didn't sit back down. I didn't ask for my old role. I left the folder on the table, their roadmap for survival, and walked out. Orion would stumble. It would rebuild, but it would never again belong to her. Later, standing outside, I felt the sun on my face and thought about everything that had led here. Betrayal isn't confined to war zones or marriages. It thrives in boardrooms, where trust is currency, and ego is poison. And revenge? It doesn't need to be loud. The most devastating retribution is silence, patience, and timing. Numbers don't lie. People do. And in the end, it's always the numbers that bury them.